We're going to look at equivalent fractions in this lesson and how we can find these equivalent fractions. First of all, we'll look at some pictures that will help us working out what we mean by an equivalent fraction, and then we'll come up with some techniques that will mean that we won't always have to have the pictures there. So in this first one, looking at this first example, what fraction of the whole shape has been shaded pink? Hopefully you're able to see that we've got 12 equal parts in this picture. So if we've got 4 of them shaded in, then clearly we've got 4 bits out of 12, so 4/12 shaded. That is also, if you think about it, the same. If we drew in line across here, another line across here, hopefully that you can see that that would be exactly the same thing as saying that we would be having 1/3 of that picture, because we can divide it up into 3 strips of 4, so each bit would be referred to as a third. So that, writing down the fraction in that way, 4 bits out of 12, the 12s are each of these little segments because we've got 12 altogether. But if we divided that same shape up in a different way, we could say that each bit, each whole strip is a third. So 4/12 is the same thing as a third, and we can write down that that's a pair of equivalent fractions. The word equivalent meaning equals. So in this picture here, what fraction of the whole shape has been shaded or coloured turquoise rather? And again, we've still got 8 pieces. This time though, we've got 3 bits out of the 12. So how else could we write that? And again, if we thought about dividing up the shape in a different way, right, so that we had it long strips like that, you can see that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bits, and we've got 1 of them all shaded in, so that's the same thing as saying we've got a quarter. So 3/12 is the same thing as a quarter. In this example here, again we've still got our 12 pieces. What fraction of the whole shape has been coloured in green? Hopefully you can see that that's 2 pieces of the 12, so 2/12. In the second picture, it shows you the shape could have been divided, exactly the same shape. We could have divided it up into bigger chunks. So in this top one, each of the little pieces is worth a 12, because there's 12 altogether. In this bottom one, right, each of the little pieces is worth a 6, because there's 6 of them. So what we can say is, or what we can see, is that 2 of these smaller pieces is the same as 1 of these bigger pieces. So 2/12 is the same thing as 1/6. So that gives us our equivalent fractions. So far we've seen, right, 4/12 is the same as a third, 3/12 is the same as a quarter, and 2/12 is the same as 1/6. Right? If we weren't trying to show you that visually, how else can we find our equivalent fractions? So looking for you to notice a couple of things about this. So one of the things is that a term that will be used is this idea of simplifying the fraction, and actually going back to those examples that we've just looked at here, right, this one here, the 4/12 equals 1/3, that's been simplified. 3/12 equals 1/4, that's been simplified, and 2/12 equals 1/6, that's also simplified. So what we're looking for is a technique that would help us get that, and what we're hoping that you would notice that if we divide the bottom number and the top number, which in this case dividing by 4, would get us to a simpler fraction, 2/3. Is that correct? If we go back and look at these ones that we had a little minute ago, so 4/12 equals 1/3. If I said, oh, if I divide by 4, top and bottom, I get this 1/3 On this one though, dividing by 4 wouldn't help me, but dividing by 3 would. So dividing by 3, top and bottom, gets me to that 1/4. And in this one, right, what I'd need to do would be dividing by 2. So we can find these equivalent fractions by dividing top and bottom, and we get to our equivalent fraction. So in this one here, though 3/5, there's nothing that I can divide into 3 that will also divide into 5, but this is going the other way, and we can see visually, right, that first picture, we've got 5 equal bars, so we've got 3 bits shaded in, that's 3/5. And this one, we've divided up the shape into 10 pieces, so what we've actually got there is 6/10, and on the last one we've divided it up into 15ths, and we can see that we've got 9 of those shaded. So this time, right, our two equal fractions, our equivalent fractions are written 3/5 equals 6/10, or we could say 3/5 is the same thing as 9/15. And what we can see this time is, rather than dividing, right, if we multiply top and bottom by the same numbers in each cases, so in the first example, multiplying by 2 top and bottom gives you the 6/10, and in the second one, multiplying by 3 top and bottom gives you the other equivalent fraction. So we've seen it visually, now we can do it without the visual pictures. We know the rule. So in conclusion, we've been able to find equivalent fractions in 2 ways. Right, the first way is where we were doing this simplifying method, where we divide top and bottom number by the same number, and that gets you smaller numbers on your fraction, but it's still equivalent. So 4/12 is the same fraction as 1/3, so that's called an equivalent fraction. Or we've seen with 3/5 that we could multiply. We did the multiplying by 2 and 3, got another fraction that was equal. It doesn't matter what you multiply top and bottom by, as long as you multiply by the same. So the example here is multiplying by 6 would give you 18 on the top and 30 on the bottom. So that's how you find your equivalent fractions, and this skill of being able to find equivalent fractions is very important to build on into the next lesson, which will be on adding and subtracting fractions.